the snowman of North Dakota. I always thought the winters in North Dakota were unforgiving yet predictable. The relentless snowstorms, biting cold, and endless white landscapes were challenges we faced year after year. But the winter of 1887 brought something far more sinister. Something that would etch itself into the very fabric of our small community in ways we could never have imagined. My name is Samuel Harding, and I was 17 years old when the legend of the snowman of North Dakota began. I grew up in Frostvale, a modest farming village nestled between the vast expanse of the Great Plains and the rugged Ural Mountains. Our lives were simple, dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the demands of the land. Christmas was a time of warmth and togetherness, a brief respite from the harshness of winter. That year, December was particularly brutal. The snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, transforming Frostvale into a ghostly white wasteland. The nights were long and dark, the cold seeped into our bones, and the silence was broken only by the howling wind and the occasional creak of a settling house. Despite the adversity, our community banded together, ensuring that no family was left without food or warmth. It was on Christmas Eve that the first whispers began. As the sun set, painting the snow in hues of pink and orange, a group of us decided to take a rare nighttime trip out to the farmlands. Our intention was to check on the remote homesteads that were harder to reach during the heavy snowfall. The journey was treacherous, the path barely visible under the thick blanket of snow. We trudged through the drifts, our breath visible in the frigid air, the sound of our footsteps muffled by the snow. As we approached an old, abandoned farmstead, the wind seemed to carry an eerie stillness, an unnatural hush that settled over the land. It was here that we saw it, a figure moving against the relentless snowfall. First, we thought it was another farmer, perhaps lost or struggling against the elements. But as we drew closer, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The figure was humanoid, towering over us at least 7 feet tall, and entirely composed of snow. It had a vaguely human shape, with arms and legs that seemed almost natural. But its movements were jerky, unnatural. Its head was round and featureless, save for 2 deep, dark hollows where eyes should be. It stood motionless for a moment, surveying us with an unsettling stillness before turning and moving away. "Did you see that?" whispered Thomas, one of my closest friends. His voice trembled with fear and awe. "Probably just a large snow drift or something," I replied, trying to rationalize what we had witnessed. But deep down, I knew it was something far more sinister. Curiosity got the better of us. We followed the creature, our steps quickening despite the danger. The snow seemed to fall harder, the wind howling louder as we ventured further into the desolate landscape. The creature moved with purpose, gliding effortlessly over the snow, leaving no trace of its passage. We struggled to keep up, our breaths ragged, the cold numbing our fingers and faces. After what felt like hours, the creature stopped at the edge of a frozen pond, turned to face us, and for a brief moment, our eyes met its dark, hollow voids. A chill unlike any other swept through me, freezing my blood and paralyzing my limbs. Without warning, the creature raised its arms, and a gust of wind surged forth, knocking us off our feet. We scrambled to our feet, disoriented and terrified, as the creature vanished into the night, leaving only silence in its wake. We stumbled back to Frostvale, shaken and breathless. The news of our encounter spread quickly, and soon, the entire village was abuzz with fear and speculation. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a rare form of snowdrift or an optical illusion. Others whispered of ancient spirits or supernatural beings awakened by the harsh winter. In the days that followed, strange occurrences plagued our village. Objects moved on their own. Eerie laughter echoed through the night, and the feeling of being watched never left us. The once peaceful winters turned into nights of unrelenting fear, as the legend of the snowman of North Dakota took root in our collective consciousness. One evening, as I sat by the fire with my family, a knock echoed through our home. My father, A stoic man hardened by years of farming approached the door cautiously. Peering through the window, he saw the same snowman standing in the doorway, his hollow eyes fixed on us. "Stay back," my father warned, his voice steady but his hand gripping his revolver tightly. The snowman stepped inside, the temperature dropping precipitously as it entered our warm home. It moved with a menacing grace, his presence overwhelming and oppressive. My younger brother, Eli, clutched his teddy bear, his eyes wide with fear. "Why are you here?" my father demanded, his voice echoing in the silent house. The snowman remained silent, his form towering over us as he advanced. Suddenly, he raised his arm, and with a swift motion, he pulled out a sharp icicle-like blade. Time seemed to slow as he lunged at us, the blade gleaming ominously in the firelight. We tried to fight back, but his strength was unnatural, his movements too swift for human reflexes. One by one, he struck, the ice piercing through flesh and bone with ease. Screams filled the house as my family fell victim to his relentless assault. I watched in horror, powerless to stop the creature that had brought our lives to an abrupt and brutal end. When the authorities finally arrived, they found our home in disarray, the snowman gone without a trace. The only evidence was the bloodied remnants of our Christmas decorations and the severed limb of my brother, lying beside the now lifeless Christmas tree. The heavy box under the tree was empty, save for the eerie stillness that now filled the room. The investigation never uncovered the true nature of the snowman of North Dakota. Some theorized it was a man driven mad by isolation and loss, while others believed it was a supernatural entity, a manifestation of the winter's darkest fears. The lack of concrete evidence only fueled the legend, turning our tragic story into a cautionary tale whispered around fireplaces each Christmas. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas Eve, but the memory of what happened in Frostvale remains etched in my mind. I moved away from North Dakota shortly after the tragedy, seeking to escape the haunting memories that plagued me. But no matter how far I ran, the image of the snowman, his hollow eyes and icy form, continues to haunt my dreams, a relentless reminder of the darkness that can emerge even in the most innocent of times. Sometimes, during the quiet moments of winter, I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a figure moving against the snowfall, eyes burning with an unnatural light. It's a chilling reminder that some legends are born from truth, and that the shadows of the past can linger, waiting to descend upon us when we least expect it. So, as you gather with your loved ones this holiday season, remember the story of the snowman of North Dakota. Cherish each moment, embrace the light, and heed the warnings whispered by the winds. For in the heart of every winter lies both beauty and terror, and it is our duty to protect the joy that makes the season truly special, lest we awaken the darkness that waits silently in the snow. Story number 2. The Frozen Ghost of the North. I never considered myself a believer in the supernatural. As a wildlife photographer, my life was grounded in reality, capturing the untamed beauty of nature, documenting elusive creatures, and enduring the harshest of elements. But that winter in 1985, deep in the remote forests of northern Canada, shattered every ounce of skepticism I held. My name is Mark Thompson, and it was my passion for the untouched wilderness that led me and a group of fellow adventurers, Sarah, Tom, and Lisa, to embark on what was meant to be an exhilarating expedition. We had heard whispers of uncharted territories, pristine landscapes untouched by human hands, perfect for our photography project. The promise of untouched beauty and the thrill of exploration were irresistible. The journey began in late November, the air crisp and the snow beginning to blanket the ground in a soft, white layer. Our convoy of rugged jeeps traversed treacherous paths, navigating through dense forests and across frozen rivers. The further we ventured, the more isolated we became, the vast expanse of snow and silence enveloping us in an almost surreal tranquility. By mid-December, we had established our base camp near the heart of the wilderness. surrounded by towering pines and the constant hum of nature. Our days were filled with long treks, capturing the ethereal beauty of snow-covered landscapes, and our nights spent huddled around the fire, sharing stories and marveling at the star-studded sky. One evening, as we were preparing dinner, Tom shared an old legend his grandfather had told him, the tale of the frozen ghost of the North. According to the story, centuries ago, a group of settlers had perished in a brutal winter storm. Their bodies, preserved by the relentless cold, were said to haunt the forest, their spirits trapped in eternal frost. Witnesses claimed to hear their ghostly laughter and feel an unnatural chill whenever they ventured too close to the site where the tragedy had occurred. We dismissed it as folklore, a cautionary tale meant to keep people wary of the unforgiving wilderness. Yet, as the nights grew longer and colder, an uneasy feeling began to settle over our group. It started subtly, strange noises in the dead of night, the sound of footsteps crunching through fresh snow, and fleeting shadows dancing at the edge of our vision. One particularly frigid night, as we sat around the fire, a blizzard of unprecedented intensity swept through the area. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and the snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, reducing visibility to mere feet. We were trapped, our tents barely holding against the fury of the storm. The temperature plummeted, and an oppressive silence settled over the camp, broken only by the occasional groan of the tents and the crackling of the fire. In the midst of the storm, Sarah was the first to notice something unusual. "Do you guys hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. I strained to listen, my breath visible in the frigid air. First, all I could hear was the storm, but then faint laughter began to emerge, eerie and distorted, carried by the howling wind. Tom frowned, trying to locate the source. "Probably just the wind playing tricks on us," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. But then, Lisa gasped. "Look!" She pointed toward the dense forest beyond our camp. Through the swirling snow, a figure began to materialize, a tall, gaunt shape, cloaked in layers of snow and ice. As it drew closer, the details became more horrifying. The figure had hollow, lifeless eyes and a twisted smile that sent chills down my spine. It was as if the legend had come to life, the frozen ghost of the North. Fear seized us as the apparition moved with unnatural grace, its presence radiating an otherworldly coldness that made the air around us shimmer. The ghostly figure stopped at the edge of our camp, its eyes fixed on us with an intensity that felt like it could pierce through our very souls. The laughter grew louder, more frantic, echoing through the storm and making our skin crawl. "Run!" Tom shouted, grabbing his flashlight and brandishing it like a weapon. "We need to get out of here." Panic erupted as we scrambled to our tents, tearing them open and trying to gather our gear. The ghost advanced, its form flickering like a mirage in the storm. The temperature around us dropped even further, frost forming on our faces and hands as we fled into the blinding snow. We raced through the forest, the ghostly laughter following us, growing louder and more insistent. The snowstorm seemed to intensify, the wind pushing us back, making each step a struggle against the relentless cold and blinding whiteness. Desperation fueled our movements, but the forest felt alive, its trees twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out and trap us. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, its windows shattered, the door hanging loosely on its hinges. With no other option, we forced the door open and rushed inside, collapsing on the frozen floor. The cabin was dark and silent, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. We huddled together, hearts pounding, trying to catch our breath and make sense of what we had encountered. But the silence was deceiving. The ghostly laughter echoed through the cabin, bouncing off the walls and amplifying our fear. The temperature inside dropped even further, our breath turning to ice crystals that sparkled in the dim light of our flashlights. Shadows danced across the walls, taking on the shapes of the fallen settlers who had perished in that fateful winter. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and the cabin was plunged into darkness. We could feel the presence of the ghost pressing in on us, the air thick with an oppressive energy that seemed to drain our will to survive. Lisa began to cry, her sobs echoing through the cabin. "We need to leave," she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. But every attempt to escape was thwarted by the ghostly apparition, which materialized before us, its hollow eyes filled with sorrow and rage. "You shouldn't have come here," it intoned, its voice a haunting blend of sorrow and malice. "This is our home, and you have disturbed our peace." Tom and I exchanged a terrified glance, realizing that the ghost was not just a figment of our imagination but a vengeful spirit bound to the land by tragedy and despair. The air around us grew colder, our bodies numb from the biting chill as the ghost reached out with icy fingers, pulling us back into the darkness. In a desperate bid to save ourselves, I grabbed Sarah's hand and yanked her toward the door. "We have to fight back," I urged, struggling against the ghost's grip. "We can't let it take us." Summoning every ounce of strength, we stood our ground, staring into the ghost's lifeless eyes. "We mean no harm," I said, my voice cracking with fear. "We're just trying to survive." The ghost paused, its form wavering as if torn between anger and sorrow. Slowly, it began to dissolve into the snowstorm, the laughter fading into the howling wind. The temperature began to rise, the oppressive cold lifting as the ghost's presence receded. Exhausted and shaken, we watched as the first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds, casting a pale glow over the desolate landscape. We left the cabin behind, our spirits battered but our lives intact. The experience left an indelible mark on us, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the restless spirits that linger in places of great tragedy. The legend of the frozen ghost of the North became a part of our shared history, a story that we would carry with us for the rest of our lives. Years later, I still visit those remote forests, driven by a need to understand the mysteries that lie hidden in the snow. The memory of that winter night remains vivid, a haunting echo of the darkness that can emerge even in the most beautiful and serene of landscapes. The ghosts of the past continue to roam the frozen wilderness, their sorrow and rage a chilling reminder of the fragility of peace and the enduring power of tragedy. So, as you venture into the wilderness this winter, remember the story of the frozen ghost of the North. Cherish each moment, embrace the warmth of your loved ones, and heed the whispers of the wind. For in the heart of every snowstorm lies both beauty and terror, and it is our duty to respect the spirits that call the frozen North their eternal home. Story number 3. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. I never believed that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved. Growing up in the small, unassuming town of Pinecrest, nestled at the edge of the vast Ural Mountains in northern Russia, I heard whispers of the Dyatlov Pass Incident from my grandfather. He had been one of the first to recount the chilling tale, his voice wavering with a mix of fear and sorrow. But it wasn't until I became an investigative journalist that I decided to uncover the truth behind those 9 lost souls who vanished on that fateful Christmas Eve in 1959. The journey began in the dead of winter, the air biting cold and the snow blanketing the landscape in an impenetrable white. I arrived at the remote pass with little more than a notebook, camera, and an insatiable curiosity. The area was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the whispering winds that seemed to carry the echoes of the past. I set up camp near the site where the hikers had met their tragic end. The tent remnants stood like ghostly sentinels, torn from the inside as if the occupants had fled from an unseen terror. My grandfather's stories played in my mind: how the tent was cut open, the inexplicable injuries on the bodies, and the missing body parts that defied logical explanation. Determined to piece together the puzzle, I began my investigation. The first few days were spent scouring through old reports and interviewing locals who still spoke of the incident with hushed reverence. Most dismissed it as a tragic accident, perhaps a result of hypothermia or a natural disaster. But others, including an elderly man named Ivan, hinted at darker forces at play. "There's something out there," he whispered one night by the fire, his eyes distant. "Something ancient and angry." Undeterred, I ventured deeper into the woods, following the faint trail that the hikers might have taken. The forest was dense, the trees towering overhead like guardians of forgotten secrets. As dusk approached, the temperature dropped sharply, and an unsettling stillness settled over the landscape. It was then that I began to feel it, a presence, almost palpable, watching me from the shadows. Nightfall brought with it a thick fog that clung to the ground, reducing visibility to mere feet. I found an abandoned campsite, the remnants of a fire long extinguished. As I documented the area, my flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced menacingly around me. A sense of dread settled in my chest, but I pressed on, driven by the need to uncover the truth. Around midnight, I decided to set up my camera near the tent remains, hoping to capture any anomalies. The wind howled through the trees, and the temperature plummeted even further. I wrapped myself tightly in my coat, the chill seeping into my bones. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the forest settling. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, dressed in tattered remnants of a parka, its face obscured by shadows. My heart raced as it approached, moving with a deliberate, almost ritualistic pace. I aimed my camera, but before I could react, the figure stopped, raising a hand as if to signal me to follow. Against my better judgment, I found myself trailing behind the apparition, deeper into the forest than I had ever dared to go. The trees seemed to close in around us, the air thick with an oppressive energy. The path led to a clearing where the remnants of a campfire still smoldered, casting a ghostly glow on the snow-covered ground. There, in the center of the clearing, stood a stone altar, ancient and weathered by time. The figure gestured towards it, and I felt an inexplicable urge to obey. As I approached, the temperature dropped further, and the shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around the altar in a mesmerizing dance. I reached out to touch the stone, and in that instant, a surge of energy coursed through me. Visions flashed before my eyes, images of the 9 hikers, their faces contorted in fear and pain, scenes of unimaginable horror that no one should ever witness. I staggered back, gasping for breath, the weight of their suffering pressing down on me. The figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving me alone in the clearing. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just experienced. It was then that I understood the Dyatlov Pass was not just a site of tragic loss, but a gateway to something far more sinister. The forest itself seemed to breathe with malevolent intent, guarding its secrets with an unyielding ferocity. Determined to leave, I began the arduous journey back to camp, the oppressive atmosphere lingering like a shadow over my every step. As I neared my campsite, the first light of dawn began to break, dispelling the darkness that had enveloped the forest. Exhausted and shaken, I packed my gear, knowing that the truth I sought had been revealed, but at a great personal cost. Returning to Pinecrest, I compiled my findings, the evidence pointing to an ancient, vengeful force that had claimed the lives of the hikers, the missing body parts, the tent torn from within, and the inexplicable injuries all spoke of a horror beyond human comprehension. My report caused a stir, reigniting the debate between rational explanations and supernatural theories. Years have passed since that harrowing Christmas Eve, but the memory of the Dyatlov Pass incident remains etched in my mind. I still visit the site occasionally, drawn by an unspoken connection to those lost souls. The forest stands as a silent testament to the darkness that can lie beneath even the most serene of landscapes, a reminder that some mysteries are better left untouched. Sometimes, on quiet winter nights, I hear whispers carried by the wind, echoes of laughter and screams that never truly fade away. It's a chilling reminder that the past never stays buried, and that the spirits of the Dyatlov Pass still roam the woods, forever seeking peace that eludes them. So, as you celebrate this Christmas, Remember the Jones family and the 9 lost souls of Dyatlov Pass. Cherish each moment, embrace the light, and heed the warnings whispered by the shadows. For in the heart of every holiday lies both joy and darkness. And it is our duty to protect the magic that makes this season truly special, lest we awaken the horrors that lurk just beyond the veil of our festive cheer. Story number 4. The Battle of the Bulge Ghosts. Winter in Europe was unforgiving, but nothing could have prepared me for the horrors that awaited us in the dense forests of the Ardennes. My name is Private James Miller, and I served with Company B, 101st Airborne Division. During the Battle of the Bulge in late 1944, the bitter cold, relentless snowstorms, and the ever-present threat of enemy fire were challenges we faced daily. Yet, amidst the chaos of war, we encountered something far more sinister, something that defied explanation and would haunt me for the rest of my life. We had been entrenched near the small village of Elsenborn, fighting a desperate battle against the advancing German forces. The night was particularly harsh, with temperatures plummeting to -20 degrees Fahrenheit and snow falling thick and heavy. Our foxholes were barely visible, mere indentations in the endless white landscape. The howling wind carried the distant sounds of artillery and the occasional whistle of bullets slicing through the air. It was on one such night that the first whispers began. Around midnight, as we huddled in our cramped foxholes, sharing stories and trying to stay warm, a low, mournful wail pierced the silence. We froze, weapons at the ready, eyes straining to pierce the darkness. The sound seemed to come from all around us, echoing through the trees and blending with the wind. No one spoke, too afraid to make a sound that might betray our position. Minutes turned into hours, and the eerie wails continued intermittently. Some soldiers dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on our frayed nerves. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The next morning, we found strange markings in the snow around our perimeter, symbols that none of us recognized, etched with deliberate intent. It was as if someone or something had been watching us, leaving messages in the frozen ground. As days turned into weeks, the supernatural occurrences became more frequent and disturbing. Soldiers reported seeing ghostly apparitions wandering through the snow, their translucent forms barely visible against the blinding white. These figures resembled soldiers from a bygone era, their uniforms tattered and faces etched with sorrow and pain. They moved silently, gliding effortlessly over the snow without leaving a trace. One night, during a particularly fierce blizzard, I found myself alone in the foxhole, separated from my comrades by a ferocious snowstorm. The howling wind was deafening, and visibility was reduced to mere feet. I huddled deeper into the earth, trying to conserve body heat, when I heard it, a soft, shuffling sound approaching my position. My heart pounded as I strained to see through the swirling snow. Out of the blinding white emerged a figure, tall and gaunt, clad in an old, worn uniform. Its eyes were hollow, devoid of life, and its mouth hung open in a silent scream. I couldn't move, paralyzed by fear as the apparition drifted closer, its presence radiating a chilling sorrow. Suddenly, the figure vanished, leaving me trembling and alone in the storm. The soldiers began to fear these ghostly visitors, believing they were the restless spirits of fallen comrades who couldn't find peace. Some thought it was a curse brought upon us by the unyielding winter, while others speculated about darker, more malevolent forces at play. Regardless of the explanation, morale plummeted as the whispers of the supernatural spread through our ranks. One evening, as we fortified our position against an anticipated German assault, the apparitions intensified. The ghostly soldiers no longer lingered at a distance but began to appear within our midst. They hovered near our foxholes, their sorrowful gazes fixed on us, as if pleading for something we couldn't understand. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, and the temperature dropped even further, turning our breath into visible puffs of vapor. I decided to confront the phenomenon head-on, driven by a desperate need to protect my fellow soldiers and unravel the mystery that plagued us. Armed with my rifle and a fierce determination, I ventured into the heart of the snow-covered forest, following the trail of apparitions. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting the landscape into an impenetrable darkness. As I walked deeper into the woods, the forest seemed to come alive with whispers and distant cries. The apparitions led me to a clearing, where the remnants of a long-abandoned battlefield lay frozen in time. Broken weapons, shattered helmets, and the skeletal remains of fallen soldiers were scattered across the ground, covered in a thick layer of ice. In the center stood a lone figure, the most formidable of all, the Wendigo. The creature was a horrifying blend of human and beast, the skin pale and mottled like cracked ice, eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. It stood tall, its limbs elongated and emaciated, claws sharp as daggers. The Wendigo's presence exuded a malevolent aura, a palpable sense of malice that sent shivers down my spine. "You shouldn't be here," it rasped, its voice a guttural growl that echoed through the clearing. "This is our domain." I raised my rifle, trembling but resolute. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The Wendigo let out a chilling laugh, a sound that seemed to pierce the very soul. "We are the forgotten, the lost souls of war. You disturb our eternal rest." Before I could respond, the creature lunged forward with supernatural speed, its claws aimed directly at me. I fired my rifle, the bullet striking the Wendigo in the chest. It staggered, letting out a scream of agony and rage, but didn't retreat. Instead, it began to morph, its form twisting and contorting into something even more monstrous. Terrified, I turned to flee, but the apparitions closed in around me, their eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. I ran blindly through the forest, the Wendigo's screams echoing behind me, driving me onward. The snowstorm intensified, the wind howling like a banshee as I navigated the treacherous terrain. Finally, I emerged from the woods, breathless and bloodied, the cold biting into my skin. The apparitions and the Wendigo were nowhere to be seen, but the oppressive weight of their presence lingered, etched into my mind. I stumbled back to camp, the haunting memories of that night seared into my consciousness. The Battle of the Bulge eventually came to an end, and we returned home with our lives intact, but forever changed by the horrors we had witnessed. The ghostly apparitions and the Wendigo became a part of our local lore, a testament to the thin line between reality and the supernatural. To this day, those who brave the forests of North Dakota during the harshest winters speak of the restless spirits and the malevolent Wendigo that roam the snow-covered landscape, forever seeking vengeance and peace. Years later, as I sit by the fireplace in the warmth of my home, I often find myself gazing into the flames, the memories of Frostvale and the Battle of the Bulge ghosts resurfacing in my mind. The legend of the Wendigo serves as a chilling reminder that some battles are fought not just with bullets and blood, but with the very essence of our souls. And as long as the winter winds howl through the forests, the ghosts of the fallen will continue to roam, their sorrow and rage a haunting echo of the darkness that can linger long after the fighting has ceased. So, as you gather with your loved ones this winter, remember the stories of those who came before us. Cherish each moment, embrace the warmth of family, and heed the whispers carried by the wind. For in the heart of every storm lies both beauty and terror, and it is our duty to protect the light that keeps the darkness at bay. Story number 5. The Villisca Axe Murder House. I always believed that some places held secrets too dark to ever be uncovered. Growing up in a small town, I heard countless tales of haunted houses and restless spirits, but none captivated me like the story of the Villisca Axe Murder House. Nestled in the heart of Iowa, this house had become a local legend, shrouded in mystery and fear since that fateful night in June 1912. But it wasn't until I visited the house during one particularly harsh winter that I truly understood the depths of its darkness. My name is Ethan Parker, and I've always been fascinated by the supernatural. As a journalist, I sought out stories that defied explanation, hoping to uncover truths hidden in the shadows. When I heard about the Villisca Axe Murder House, I knew I had to investigate. The tale of the brutal slaughter of the Moore family and their guests by an unknown assailant with an axe had lingered in my mind for years, but I wanted to see it for myself. Winter in Iowa is unforgiving. By December, the landscape is buried under a thick blanket of snow, and the nights grow long and bitterly cold. The Villisca house stood silent and foreboding against the monochromatic backdrop. Its once vibrant paint now chipped and faded by the relentless weather. The iron gate creaked in the wind, swaying gently as if beckoning me to enter. As I approached the house, the temperature seemed to drop even further. My breath formed visible puffs in the frigid air, and the wind howled through the barren trees, carrying with it whispers that sent chills down my spine. The path to the front door was obscured by snowdrifts, making each step a cautious endeavor. The house loomed larger as I drew closer, its windows dark and empty, staring back at me like hollow eyes. I pushed open the heavy wooden door, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. My flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing a grand foyer adorned with remnants of past lives, dust-covered furniture, shattered ornaments, and the eerie silence of abandonment. The once grand staircase stood as a monument to forgotten grandeur, its banister cold and slick with moisture. I set up my equipment, the sound of my movements echoing unervingly through the empty halls. As night deepened, the house seemed to come alive with unseen forces. The temperature plummeted, my breath fogging in front of me as I explored room by room. In the dining hall, I could almost hear the ghostly echoes of laughter and conversation, memories of a family long gone. The chandelier above swayed gently, its crystals tinkling like distant bells. In the living room, the fireplace stood cold, its mantel adorned with cracked photo frames and broken figurines. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, the shadows dancing at the edge of my vision. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. My heart pounded as I fumbled for my camera, capturing the fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure disappearing down the hallway. Determined to uncover the truth, I ascended the staircase, each step creaking ominously beneath my weight. The upper floor was even colder, the air thick with an oppressive presence. In the master bedroom, I found the remnants of the Moore family's lives, a cracked mirror reflecting my pale, frightened face, and an old, rusted axe propped against the wall, a chilling reminder of the violence that had occurred here. As I documented the room, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in pitch blackness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to turn it back on, the silence pressing in from all sides. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. I could feel the presence of something or someone lurking just out of sight. A cold hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around to face the empty hallway. I let out a strangled cry, stumbling back into the darkness. The temperature dropped even further, my breath freezing in midair as I tried to steady my racing heart. The whispers returned, louder this time, carrying with them words I couldn't comprehend. It was as if the house itself was trying to communicate, to tell me its tragic story through the voices of the lost. Desperate to escape, I made my way back to the foyer, my legs numb from the cold. The house seemed to shift around me, corridors elongating and rooms disappearing as I navigated the labyrinthine structure. The whispers followed, growing more insistent, more desperate. I could sense the pain and anger of the spirits trapped within these walls, their unfinished business keeping them bound to this forsaken place. Just as I reached the front door, a figure materialized before me, a man dressed as Santa Claus, his eyes hollow and filled with malice. The infamous murderous Santa, the embodiment of the darkness that had plagued this house for decades. He raised his axe, the blade glinting ominously in the dim light. My instincts kicked in, and I sprinted towards the door, the sound of his footsteps echoing behind me. I burst out into the cold night, the snow whipping against my face as I ran back to my car. The sound of the axe striking the ground stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving me in the eerie silence of the winter night, gasping for breath. I glanced back at the house, its windows still dark and empty, the Santa figure nowhere to be seen, shaken but alive. I drove away from Villisca, the weight of what I had experienced pressing heavily on my soul. The investigation into the original murders had never uncovered the true identity or motive of the killer, leaving the legend of the murderous Santa Claus to fester in the collective fear of the community. My encounter confirmed what many had speculated. Something malevolent still lingered in the shadows of the Villisca Axe Murder House, waiting for the next unsuspecting visitor to awaken its wrath. Years have passed since that harrowing winter, but the memory of the snowman of North Dakota and the murderous Santa Claus remain vivid in my mind. I've written about my experiences, hoping to shed light on the darkness that hides behind seemingly ordinary facades. But some mysteries are best left unexplored, their secrets buried beneath layers of snow and time. Sometimes, during the quiet moments of winter, I hear the faint sound of footsteps in the snow, the distant echo of an axe's swing, or the eerie whispers of lost souls. It's a chilling reminder that evil can take many forms, and that the spirits of the past never truly rest. The Villisca Axe Murder House stands as a testament to the thin line between reality and nightmare, a place where the horrors of history come alive under the cover of darkness. So, as you gather with your loved ones this holiday season, cherish each moment and embrace the light. Remember that behind every twinkling light and every cheerful laugh, there may lie untold stories of sorrow and vengeance. Protect your happiness, honor the memories of those lost, and remain vigilant, for even in the warmth of Christmas, shadows can lurk, waiting to descend upon us when we least expect it. Story number 6. The Wendigo. I always felt a strange pull towards the untamed wilderness, a yearning to uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the blanket of snow and shadow. Growing up in Duluth, Minnesota, the tales of the Wendigo were whispered around campfires, cautionary stories meant to keep children close and respectful of the unforgiving winter. But I never truly believed in them until I found myself face to face with the legend. My name is Ethan Walker, and I've spent the last decade as a wildlife biologist, studying the elusive creatures of North America's northern forests. The Wendigo, a monstrous entity from Algonquian folklore, was always relegated to the realm of myth and superstition. Tall, gaunt, with skin as pale as the snow and eyes that burned with an insatiable hunger, the Wendigo was said to roam the wilderness during the harshest winters, driven by an unending desire to consume human flesh. In the winter of 2020, curiosity got the better of me. A series of unexplainable disappearances in remote parts of Minnesota had stirred local legends, and I was determined to uncover the truth. Equipped with my gear and a healthy dose of skepticism, I ventured into the dense forest near Lake Vermilion, where the latest reports had emerged. The first few days were uneventful. I tracked animal movements, collected samples, and documented the pristine yet perilous beauty of the northern woods. But as the nights grew longer and colder, an unsettling presence began to permeate the air. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, low, guttural growls and the crunch of footsteps in the snow. At first, I dismissed them as the noises of wildlife, but something about them felt off, almost deliberate. One evening, as I sat by the campfire reviewing my notes, a thick fog rolled in, muffling the sounds and cloaking the forest in an eerie silence. The temperature plummeted, and my breath fogged in the frigid air. I heard it then, a faint whisper, barely audible, but unmistakably human. My heart raced as I strained to listen, but the sound vanished as quickly as it had come. The next morning, I discovered footprints unlike any animal tracks I'd seen before, large, elongated impressions that seemed to move with purpose, heading deeper into the forest. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to follow them. As dusk approached, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and silence. Every snap of a twig and rustle of leaves heightened my anxiety, making me feel as though unseen eyes were watching my every move. Night fell swiftly, and I found myself at the edge of a clearing where the moonlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy. In the center stood a figure, impossibly tall and impossibly thin, its skin blending seamlessly with the surrounding snow. Its eyes glowed with a fierce, unnatural light, and its mouth curled into a grotesque semblance of a smile. The Wendigo, frozen with terror, I watched as it moved gracefully toward me, each step deliberate and silent. My mind raced for an escape, but my body refused to obey. The creature stopped mere feet away, its hollow eyes piercing into my soul. I could feel its hunger, a palpable force that seemed to reach into my very being. "Why do you hunt us?" I managed to whisper, my voice cracking under the weight of fear. The Wendigo tilted its head, an expression of sorrow mingling with its predatory gaze. It extended a long, skeletal hand, pointing toward the heart of the forest. "The forest needs you," it intoned, its voice a chilling blend of human and something far more sinister. Before I could react, a surge of cold energy enveloped me, my vision blurring as darkness crept at the edges. I struggled to stay conscious, the Wendigo's presence overwhelming my senses. Images flashed before my eyes, families torn apart by hunger, the desperation of survival turning into monstrous acts. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, filling my mind with anguish and despair. When I awoke, the morning sun was beginning to pierce through the remnants of the fog. My body ached, and my memory of the night was fragmented, filled with nightmares and unanswered questions. I hurried back to my camp, packing my gear with trembling hands. As I left the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Wendigo was still watching, waiting for another chance to sate its eternal hunger. Back in civilization, I tried to process what I had experienced. Colleagues dismissed it as hallucinations brought on by isolation and exhaustion. But I knew what I had seen was real. The Wendigo wasn't just a myth. It was a manifestation of nature's darkest impulses, a reminder of the thin line between humanity and monstrosity. Years have passed since that fateful winter, but the memory of the Wendigo remains vivid in my mind. I still visit the northern forests, driven by a need to understand the balance between survival and savagery. The legend of the Wendigo serves as a haunting reminder of our own primal instincts, the potential for darkness that lies within us all. Sometimes, on cold winter nights, I hear the distant echoes of growls and whispers carried by the wind, a chilling reminder that some legends are born from truth. The Wendigo may roam the forests of North America, forever searching for sustenance, forever a symbol of humanity's deepest fears. So, as you prepare for your holiday season, take a moment to reflect on the stories that shape our understanding of good and evil. Remember that even in the midst of joy and celebration, shadows can linger, waiting to remind us of the fragile nature of peace. Cherish each moment, embrace the light, and stay vigilant, for the darkness is never far behind.